I know this has happened to you, so I'm not even going to guess. Have you ever been in a GNC or maybe at the gym, right? Some of us, depending on your starting point, right? So maybe it hasn't happened to everybody, so I stand corrected. But and you overhear someone giving advice, right? They give advice to someone else, to another person. You're listening, and you're like, they don't know what they're talking about. They have no idea what they're talking about. They're so off kilter. I know way more about this than they do. Shame on them for feeling that they can give experience, right? So that's a bad way to be. And I've done it too. But that's a really bad way to be. And the reason that's a bad way to be is that everyone has a different starting point and everybody has a different perspective. That's just the way it is. So it is not the best idea to consistently always think like an expert. It actually does not put you in a good place. And I'd like to talk a little bit about why that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see, not only in fitness, but just in life in general. That you may feel as if you have an expertise about a particular topic, but the problem is that when you have that mentality, you stop learning, you stop listening, and really you stop progressing because you don't entertain any other perspectives that can cause an issue. So I want to talk a little bit about why it's important to continue to have an open mind and to talk about how long, not that you've been training, but trying to entertain any other different thought processes and perspectives and to think like a rookie. You're going to hear me say that a lot. Think like a rookie. Okay? So training and experience can blind you. It can put blinders over you. And why? Well, and when you're new, think about it. When you're new, you're very open to any feedback that anybody gave you. And again, this is with everything: nutrition, with training, with life, with thought processes, with your job, right? But regarding training, you focus on your form when you begin. In the beginning, you don't recover, or you recover properly, right? You recover the right way. You do everything you know you're supposed to do. You don't skip steps because you want to make sure that you get a good benchmark and good starting grounds because you want to get results, right? The longer you train, it's easier to assume, oh, I learned since then, I know better. I'm going to go this route instead of that route. I know some good shortcuts. So really what happens is you ignore the feedback that your body gives you. Your body consistently throws feedback at you, especially in the very beginning. You get a lot more of that in the beginning. Our bodies become stagnant because we've been doing things for so long that we may not see those results as well. So you try to alter things and do things different than what you did before. Problem is, the beginner's mind is very coachable, right? That changes as you gain knowledge and as you get confidence, but sometimes due to a fault, right? And as you guys know, athletes such as, those individuals that are extreme athletes that, they have a very heavy expenditure on things that they do physically and mentally, it really ends up as well. When they do it right, they don't outgrow the basics. Because in some cases, the basics are what it takes to keep you healthy. When it comes to your joints and keeping your joints preserved, to keep your health preserved, you stick to the basics, and that's how you make progress, right? So, talking a little bit about nutrition. So, think of some of the things that you've been doing since the beginning that you haven't changed. Those of you that's been doing this for a little while, right? Your protein. Typically, a lot of individuals in the fitness world successfully always hit protein, right? It hasn't changed. It's always the case. They never really think of a plan where they aren't going to hit their protein. So, whole foods, they don't try to overcomplicate timing with their supplements. Sometimes we may test and try different supplements, but experience can sometimes lead to overthinking. The basics is where it starts. You don't want to start chasing hacks. You don't want to start chasing anything that has to do with something that didn't work in the very beginning. And I will always say this, that boring is effective. If you're getting bored, and this is with everything, this is in some cases with what you do on the day to day with your life, not necessarily home life, but career basis. All of us love to have careers that we enjoy and we love, but then you can stagnate sometimes too, right? And then also for training and fitness, if you're sticking to the status quo and it's not anything that has to do with an elaborate new process, then it's it's considered boring. That means you're doing it right. Because in some cases, the monotony is where you will find success. Everything doesn't have to be some type of a new process. In most cases, your progress is going to be found that way. So boring beats advanced techniques that may not last. So here's a few reasons why beginner thinking really matters most and can give you an advantage, right? A few things. A rookie expects to struggle. They know that they're going to struggle. They have that expectation. They are not going to be caught off guard with not having to have that advantage, right? If they will, then if anything, it's a pleasant surprise. Puts them in a good place. They expect discomfort, so they know they're going to be put in a place that they're unfamiliar with, and they're ready for it because they're starting out that way. So there is no doubt. They expect to learn. They expect to obtain new skills. So they kind of become a sponge because this is the beginning of the game, right? So it's an expectation and they're primed for it. Experienced people on the other side expect things to be relatively easy sometimes. Oh, I've done this before. I've done this 1,000 times. So because of that, frustration happens. So it's almost, if you swing harder on the other side of the pendulum, experienced people expect for things to go perfectly, and then they do not, which is a lot more disappointing and can stagnate goals, right? So, some of the things, if you change that to having a beginner's mindset when you are experienced, it can help you say things like, I'm still learning. I'm always still learning. Even though I'm experienced in this field, I can improve. I can always do better and progress. And I don't have to be perfect when making progress because sometimes it can get kind of nasty to move the needle forward. That's just the way that it goes, right? Progress is never linear. It's never in a straight line. In order to learn, you have to have missteps. If you don't make enough mistakes, then you usually find out the hard way. And I think we all have learned in some form or another that that's the case, right? Having that mindset reduces burnout, perfectionism, right, which is really a reliance, and emotional fatigue because you're constantly on the up and down. It keeps growth curious, right, and rather than expectant. So it's one thing to have growth and be expecting it, and yeah, I know I'm going to do great here, rather than, oh, well, I wonder how far this is going to take me. You have that thought process, and that will take you to that next step because you can expect that there may be a couple missteps and steps backwards in order to step forward. So, just to recap, thinking like a beginner doesn't mean forgetting your experience, right? Not at all. It's just a thought process to where you can absorb new things. You learn from other people. It means refusing to let it limit you to the results and to the things that you already know. You're opening, your mind to anything that has to do with some items and things that you may not be aware of. You stay hungry, you stay humble, you stay willing to learn. That moment that you stop thinking like a rookie, you can slow down because otherwise you're going to only get the expectation of progress that you're already familiar with. You always want to branch out. And I guess the last piece really is, most importantly, is ask a lot of questions. Anything that you're unfamiliar with or anything that has to do with a subject matter that you feel that you could get more experience on. And even if you have a ton of experience on that, you will be surprised because you may have been in your own thought processes. Times change. Times consistently change, and we all know that. Because times change, that means mental thought processes change. An expert 15 years ago or 20 years ago in a particular field is not the same expert 20 years in the future, right? A person now and what they know in the fitness industry and conditioning and nutrition, this now in 2025, what we're in right now, at the end of it, was not the same in the year 1980, right? There's things that efficiencies and new things that have been created and that we've learned since then. So think if you only took the experience as an expert that you had back in 1980 or 1990 to 2025, ask yourself, would you be at a disadvantage or would you be at an advantage? Leave you with that.